Today's a great day for recording because the white noise issue is taken care of. So, with that being said, let's celebrate by doing a character explained. And who better to do a character explained for than Kento Nanami himself? So, if we're going to talk about Kento Nanami, I just got to make this comparison real quick because there's never been another character that is the Jiraiya to a Naruto in JJK that Nanami is to Yuji. Because while you have characters like Gojo who remind you about Kakashi, who would Kento Nanami be if he wasn't Jiraiya? The guy that gets somebody else's student and trains them better than that person would have because they're focused on training somebody else, right? And you can make that argument that Gojo's training Yuta better or that he's training Megami better. And yeah, I get it. He did train Yuji to a point, but so did Kakashi with Naruto. So, now that I got the comparison out the way, let's get into Kento Nanami and let's talk about his personality and then his abilities. Nanami's personality is the most realistic personality I've ever seen in any anime character because that man talks about life the way that we do. And be honest with yourself, if you go to the store and you were really craving like pretzels or something and they don't have them there, you know for a fact you're disappointed. And that's how Nanami lives life. He thinks that being an adult is just basically going to your favorite store, seeing they don't have something that you really want, and then you're just like filled with sadness. Tell me you don't feel the same way, because I know I do. So it's a very common thing that we experience. So I like his personality. I really do. And he's also lived that life of saying, hey, as a young guy, I was a jiu-jitsu scholar, I was a jiu-jitsu sorcerer, and you know what? My friend died, and I don't like that. I think I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm going to go see what it's like doing business in the real world. So he left, he went into the real world, he did business. He was selling stock for people who had the funds to be able to put large amounts towards different companies in order to make a profit. And you know, he was really good at it. He was really, really good at it. So he decided, which one's better for me? Is being a jiu-jitsu sorcerer where I put my life on the line and I watch my comrades pass? Is that better for me because I do enjoy that line of work and I enjoy making people's lives better after exercising a curse? Or is using people's money to make them more profit because money's good, is that better for me? Which one makes me happier? And ultimately, he went with the former and he decided to be a jiu-jitsu scholar again. I know I keep calling them jiu-jitsu scholars, but that thing is sticking now that I keep saying that. So now that you got that brief introduction about Kento Nanami, let's go ahead and talk about all the characteristics that he checks off because my man checks off about half the blocks that we look for when we're doing a character explained. So if we're talking Nanami, he's checking off skill, hand-to-hand combat because he actually has some pretty decent hands in JJK, intellect, durability, cursed energy, and you gotta talk about his curse technique because it might be the most handy technique in all of JJK. So when we're talking about skills with Nanami, you gotta bring up the fact that he has been stated to be the grade 1 sorcerer. Like the grade 1. Like you talk about people being grade 1 sorcerers, but he is the example of what a grade 1 should be. He's got basically even stats all the way around when it comes to durability, when it comes to hand-to-hand combat, strength, anything. He's basically what you want to reach if you're going to be calling yourself a grade 1. Because there's some grade 1s out there who focus and specialize in certain techniques or certain levels of strength or certain whatever. But Nanami is the pinnacle of being an overall grade 1 sorcerer. And if you get to his level where he acknowledges you, good job, man. You did it. You are a grade 1 sorcerer. But besides being a person that everybody wants acknowledgement from, Nanami has proven himself when it comes to intellect because he knows in situations where he's fighting against an opponent where he has a disadvantage, he knows what to do in order to get out of that situation to live to fight another day. He also knows when his technique is very advantageous against an opponent and when to strike certain body parts in order to stop their movement, in order to stop their advance on him, in order to do anything in order to give him the advantage in the fight because he's not here to mess around. He's trying to exercise curses and he's trying to live to see another day. And when I'm talking about live to see another day, I have to bring up the fact that he is an expert swordsman, because that short sword, that blunt instrument that he uses to exercise cursed spirits, yeah, that is a sword, and he is very, very proficient with that sword. He is able to go against Mahito twice before, his eventual downfall. And Mahito, at the end of the day, is one of the strongest cursed spirits, special grade cursed spirits we have ever seen. So don't get it twisted. Him going up against Mahito 2 times and surviving both, yeah, 100%. You got to give the man some credit, because he's got the skill to survive those situations, and that's thanks to some of his swordsmanship there. But if you catch him where he says, nah, I don't need my sword, I can handle this with just these. Cool, perfect. It does not matter. Nanami's a trained hand-to-hand fighter. We've seen him go up against low-class cursed users and just absolutely destroy them in a fight, not just because of durability or cursed reinforcements. No, it's just simply at the fact that he outclasses them in hand-to-hand combat. Or if he's going up against somebody like Dagon, where he is using his sword instead of his fist, hey, he might not be absolutely destroying him in a fight, but yes, he is landing blows. Even though Dagon is, an endless mountain of HP, he's still landing these blows where he's implying some form of damage. It just isn't enough to beat down on Dagon's massive amount of health. But that doesn't mean anything, because Nanami is still showing his ability to cause damage to his opponent. When we're talking about Nanami's intellect, let's talk about the fact that when Gojo was sealed, Nanami was the first person to make a plan of what his team needs to do. And mind you, his team already had a set objective, but they heard Gojo was sealed, and they had to make a move in order to A, recover Gojo, and B, not die. Because if you sealed the strongest creature in all of existence, yes, that's terrifying. I'm going to need to make a new plan in order to survive. And thanks to that guy on the wall over there, he was able to do so. Now, that doesn't mean that everything went according to plan, because, again, you're dealing with Kenny Kenjaku, and this guy is a mastermind when it comes to planning. But his plan did lead everybody to some form of safety. It's just certain things happen along the lines of Toji coming back, along the lines of, special grade cursed spirits roaming Shibuya, and of course that man Sukuna coming back and being resurrected with 15 fingers did not help anybody's situation. So, with all that being said, give Nanami his flowers, because who really could plan for any of those random little obstacles to come up? And if you don't think that was enough of an intellectual moment for Nanami, let's talk about the fact that he was able to assess the situation against Mahito on his second time meeting Mahito, and being able to tell that Yuji was able to injure him, so he did a combo attack with Yuji, because he knows his blows aren't going to injure Mahito, however they will distract him so that Yuji could get a hit in, and their combination and rush of attacks were enough to overpower Mahito to the point where he needed to exhaust all his cursed energy in order to do his domain expansion for the first time. Now, if it wasn't for that, they would have forced him into a corner and exercised Mahito in Season 1. So, I gotta give it to Nanami. He's a genius for what he does. Moving on to his durability, this is impressive, because subconsciously Nanami's durability is perhaps better than it is when he's consciously using cursed energy reinforcement. And the reason I say that is because what other sorcerer do you know that is going to use their cursed energy to reinforce their soul when Mahito's trying to use idle transfiguration on you? No one. Absolutely nobody, except for Yuji, because he knows the shape of his soul, so he's able to reinforce his soul. But Nanami does not. Nanami knows nothing about the shape of his soul, but subconsciously he's that good with his cursed energy control that he's able to reinforce his soul to protect himself. You're not going to tell me that his durability is not peak when it comes to that. And even if you don't think that's impressive, let's just talk about the fact that versus a low-level cursed user, he's not taking any damage whatsoever with his cursed energy reinforcement. He's not. He looks like a solid wall when it comes to everybody else. Special grades are the only ones that we saw that injured Nanami. Just saying. And since I'm talking about his cursed energy reinforcement and cursed energy control so much, let's get into his cursed energy, because Nanami has great use of his cursed energy, and not to mention the fact that he's hit 4 black flashes in a row, which before the king of black flashes came into the picture, Nanami had the record for the most black flashes hit. But if that's not impressive enough, we could talk about his curse technique or even just his binding vows, because when we talk about Nanami, we have the in one's hand binding vow, where you basically tell your opponent your moveset so that they, in a sense, know what you're doing and how to do it, so that they know how to counter it. So basically adding that risk makes your technique stronger now. Or you have overtime, which overtime is Nanami's binding vow that he has all the time in place. Basically, what Nanami does with this binding vow called overtime is that he keeps himself to 80 to 90% of his cursed energy. He never goes over 90%. And by never going over 90%, what Nanami is able to do is, if he's working a normal 9 to 5 shift, the second it goes past 5 p.m., he has access to 110 to 120% of cursed energy now. So, if he breaks this rule and he goes over the 90%, because I know you're wondering what happens there, then instead of going to 110 to 120%, he actually just goes to 101%. Because if you break a binding vow that you implement with yourself, the only punishment you incur is that you lose the benefit that you would have gained. But I know I mentioned his curse technique already, so let's go ahead and talk about ratio technique. Because ratio technique, I love it. I love it. Basically what it does is, on your opponent, it doesn't matter where on them, because you get to choose. So if you want to do a forearm, if you want to do the head, if you want to do the torso, it does not matter. On any part of your opponent or on an object, basically create a straight line on that with 10 dashes. So on the 7th line, what you are able to create is a weak point. So out of the 10, on the 7th one, you create a weak point, and you're able to strike that weak point, and then it's going to cause immense amount of damage to your opponent. It's great when you're fighting against opponents that are stronger than you, because even if there's a big gap between the two of you, you're able to use ratio technique in order to find a weak point and create it and exploit it. So he's also able to use one other technique called collapse. And collapse is basically when Nanami uses cursed energy imbued into his fist or his sword, and he punches against, say, for example, a wall, right? The wall will get the cursed energy dispersed through it, collapse it, and then all the rubble is going to have his cursed energy coming down onto the opponent, so that when it hits with the force of basically one of his normal punches with cursed energy imbued to it. So it's a way to cause a wide amount of damage and also destroy, say, like objects in his path. And that's everything you need to know about Nanami, because yes, I know he is so awesome, but the man does not have a domain expansion, unfortunately. So he does hit 6 out of the 13 characteristics that we look for. So he's pretty much fallen in place with majority of the people we've done a character explain for so far. So I'd like to think that Nanami is a pretty good Jujutsu sorcerer when it comes down to overall Jujutsu sorcerers. And yeah, I will do a overall ranked and explained with Jujutsu sorcerers, so that you can see where I think Nanami lands in the whole list of them. But if you guys like the video, then go ahead, hit the like button. Please subscribe. I appreciate y'all for doing so. And then hit the noti button. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you on the next video.